Hello, I'm Joe Ruggiero, and welcome to my podcast, Inspired, and the people that inspire me. Well, today we're in for a real treat because this is a guy who is a real and true Renaissance man, and when we get into his background, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But we're going to talk a little bit about Hollywood history, a little bit about interior design, how we got into it. But here we are at the Calabasas Country Club, which I want to thank all of the staff for helping us feel so much at home. And I want to welcome Tom Calloway. And Tom, I haven't gotten into your background, but I will say that you were born and raised in Appleton, Wisconsin. You studied art history, painting, printmaking in France and Holland. And you did also play football and basketball, I believe. And you also played in summer stock during college. You're a member of the Los Angeles design community, past board member of the ICAA, Hollywood Reporter's Top 25 Designers, House Beautiful Top 100 Designers, and Most Expensive Homes, Top 25 Designers in Los Angeles. So welcome.
Well, thank you. That's more history than I was expecting to see coming back at me.
Well, I didn't want to talk too much because I didn't want to scoop what we're going to be talking about, but I want you to tell us a little bit about your childhood because I think that's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Joe. My childhood, I started like most young Americans in that time period of literally living in front of the first TVs we would get in our homes. We were a little later on our block to get one, but after watching the neighbors for a year or two, we finally did. And all the early westerns, which were on television, and all those early shows that were kind of primarily pointed towards young kids, I absolutely inhaled, and along with any movie that had anything to do with westerns. And so my dream from childhood on was really to become an actor, to become a movie star in western films. That was my dream goal. But where I grew up in middle to northern Wisconsin, you didn't walk around saying something like that. I had this wonderful parent.
Inspiration.
Inspiration.
Well, your dad was
exactly. My father
maker.
was a pattern maker, but was an extraordinary athlete through school. He was the first 12-letter man in his high school, and I don't know how many there have been since, but I doubt if many. And he was the man's man in every conceivable way. So he was my hero in so many ways. Particularly the athletic part of him was something I yearned to do and be. Live up to in his eyes.
Right.
And he was so kind and non-judgmental and so wonderful, so I never had to worry about living up to his eyes, but that was my goal.
Well, he was a carver, too. You were telling me about the...
Yeah, he wasn't a carver to my knowledge. I mean, he did this incredible job called pattern making, which is in the foundry business. All things that are cast in steel or any kind of metal, a pattern is required, and in those days, before computers existed and things, all these things needed to be made in reverse in wood to the 64th of an inch.
Wow.
It's almost
almost
incomprehensible.
Right.
And in a way, it is an art. I never thought of my father as an artist in any way, an artist, because he never was projecting those kinds of points of view until later in my life, like in college, I walked into his shop one day and all these wood patterns from the past, painted in black and orange and kind of a brick red, were all stacked against a wall. And here was like this monster Louise Nevelson sculpture staring me in the face.
Yeah.
And it hit me, my dad's an artist too. But my mother was the one that I thought of as an artist. Neither one had any exposure. They both came from particularly my father, extremely, almost on the edge of poverty. extremely hard work, broken home, all those kinds of things.
Right.
My mom didn't have a broken home in any way. She came from a very strong German, previously farm community people who
Big Germans in Wisconsin.
yes,
Yeah.
and her father was this remarkable man who left home in the 5th grade and became, in those days, he became the head of the electrical system for Appleton, Wisconsin. This is a fellow with no education, no training, no nothing. He learned electricity, learned to be an electrician, became the city electrician. And in those days, as a child, I remember seeing him, the chief of police and the fire chief and the city electrician all wore uniforms with brass buttons, navy blue, hats, caps, this whole 9 yards. So he was dressed in this uniform, and he looked like someone like was, the law.
Right, exactly.
The head of this.
You wanted to salute him.
Yeah, you wanted to salute him, and he was an iron-fisted, tough guy. But anyway, getting back to my mother, with this kind of household, she worked. All of them worked. My father and mother both worked their entire lives. My mother still does, and she's 98.
Oh, God.
It's
bless her.
unbelievable.
Yeah, that's
it's
fabulous.
positively
Sturdy
unbelievable.
stock.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you don't know this about me, but Wisconsin has a very, very special place in my heart because the Kohler Company
Yes.
not only supported my HGTV
They did.
career,
Oh, wow.
but they also supported my launch into my own business.
No kidding.
So I have great reverence for
Yes.
the Kohler family and Wisconsin, which I used to
Yes.
travel to quite a bit.
That whole Kohler world is
Dynasty.
extraordinary.
Oh, I know. And
Extraordinary.
wonderful, wonderful people. But
Yes.
now let's get into the heart of things
Yeah.
because you traveled extensively to learn art.
Yeah.
You went to France and Holland. And,
Right.
What was it? How did you get that impetus to say, this is what I want to do?
Well, like most things, it isn't, even though art was a huge goal of mine, and I was, well, let me put it this way. Where I came from, you grew up to be some form of a lawyer or a doctor or businessman or some other very male thing.
Right.
And my mother influenced me in a very strong way she was one of maybe the earliest Martha Stewart.
Right.
She had her own television program.
Wow.
Teaching tailoring, sewing,
Wow.
and other home things, but mainly it was around sewing and being a tailor. She was a tailor. She worked in dress shops. She had her own business. Anyway, so as a kid, I would sit at the table going through pattern books, choosing what I thought my mother should wear, and she would listen to me as a kid, little kid, and say,
Isn't that wonderful?
I'll go with that. Or she'd go shoe shopping, and I'd sit there and I'd watch her put on things. I said, no, that doesn't suit you, change it, and she would do it. And as a result, I had this sense of being celebrated as a person's point of view that was worth considering.
Well, this is very interesting because of all of the people I interview, male and female, everyone, and maybe it's because I'm interested in it, but we all go back to our childhood.
Yeah.
And we all have similar
Really.
situations in
that
our
doesn't
childhood.
shock me at all.
And that was,
Yeah.
and I can remember because I went to Catholic school for 8 years, and that's the way my father wanted it, an Italian immigrant.
Yeah.
And I can remember Sister Concordia taking me out of Mass in the morning and asking me to come in and draw a picture for Parents' Night.
Right.
And that was the first encouragement I ever got about my creative side.
Yes.
And I really owe it to her. And we were talking about angels that, influence you as you go.
Right.
But I think there's a very strong bond between a son and a mother.
Yeah, well,
And
I
I
certainly
think-
had one. It sounds like you did too.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Anyway, so my mother absolutely encouraged, never discouraged the artistic side of me. So I was painting and drawing. I had in grade school, we had a school paper, and I had a comic strip called Clifford that I drew for every paper. I was always doing something visual.
And you were the only one in your college to get your own show.
The only one in their history.
Yes.
And to this day, I've found out that's the case.
But I never even knew this about you. Where can we see your artwork? Do you
it's-
post it?
No, I have a couple of things I've posted, but since my career first went into the acting world, and then eventually, after 20 years of acting, there was a major shift into design, interior design, and architecture. I've never really pushed it or promoted it or shown it.
Well, I give you a lot of credit because you really walked the streets of Manhattan and auditioning and whatever.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I can remember my dad setting me down. He was he was an immigrant from Italy, from Sicily. And actually, he was from Italy. My mother was from Sicily. And he said to me, no Broadway. Because I was Mr. Design the Sets, performing
Yeah.
in high school, college. I even sold tickets when I was in grammar school
Right.
to my shows. And he said, absolutely not. And I said, how about design? No design.
Yeah.
So it took me 60 years to get to design.
Yes.
So how did you get that strength to do what you wanted to do?
I just felt, in my bones, I felt
Totally.
I have to get to New York. That's where it's at. And so I did this little summer stock stuff in my local area, and we had a director producer of that, and I did this show, and it was just a delight. It's crazy. The young person, a child actor, a child person who was the younger brother of a girl and a family that I loved, and his dad was my personal doctor. I said, I know the kid that's perfect for this part, and it was Willem Dafoe.
Wow.
And Willem was a local kid from my hometown,
I didn't
and
know
the
that.
youngest child of this family, and he's just had his star on Hollywood
Right.
just a week ago or whatever. A remarkable, talented fella. But anyway, getting back to where was I with?
From design, or from acting to design?
Yeah. Anyway, getting to New York, I just had this sense that from this director that I wanted to try doing more acting, and he said, there's a school in New York, the Neighborhood Playhouse, one of the best, and so I applied and I got in at the last second, and off I went. Didn't know anybody, and went to this school. And then hit the streets after that, trying to get a good agent, and that was literally 10 years of struggle.
Well, it
and
takes 10 years to be an overnight sensation.
That's right. I don't know if I ever became the sensation I dreamed.
But how did you get here to the
Well,
West Coast?
I got here because I did a play that took me out of town, a pre-Broadway show. I don't know if you know from Cats and other things, Betty Buckley, a wonderful
sure.
Broadway
Yes,
star.
from Texas.
She was the female lead. I was the male lead. And we were doing this play, and I finally got agents on a higher level that I dreamed of to come and see it. And one of them said, just like in the movies, come and see me on
Right,
Monday. So I walked in and fully expected to sign up with this person, hopefully. And he said, I'll take you, but only under one condition. Your resume for a person your age will never cut it in New York. But if you go to Hollywood, if you go to I think you could get into TV and movies out there at your age. And
Right.
I was like 32. And he said, you're kind of old, but
Right, but
but give it a shot. And I had just been fairly recently married. I had just designed and built our first place together that was lovely. Both of us had been on soap operas. My wife was a soap opera star, and so we were making a little money. And I did this whole co-op in New York. And I no more finished it, had this meeting with this agent, and I up and went out here by myself. And my wife, who had her contract on the soap, couldn't leave. So she stayed behind, and for almost a year and a half we were apart, right after we were newlyweds. It was really tough.
Well,
but
you have
anyway,
to
that's
do
what
you have
got
to
me
do.
here. That's what
But
got
you know,
me here.
it's very interesting that you say about the old Hollywood, oh, we must work together. When I was working at Ethan Allen, I had the opportunity to do a week on the Mike Douglas show.
Oh, yeah.
And I would decorate, and I'd do tabletop, and I would do cooking and whatever
Yes,
for
yes.
celebs that Mike would have as co-host each day. And so at the end of it, the producer of the show said, oh, that was great. Someday we must work together. And I thought, the old Hollywood line.
Right,
you know?
right.
10 years later, he calls me.
Wow.
And he says, HGTV is going to be a 24-hour design show.
Yeah.
They're going to have their own network. Would you be interested in pitching a show with me? And we got on a plane, went to Cincinnati, and we launched the network. It was the first show they bought. And I'll never forget, for $1 million, we thought that we were heroes.
Yes.
Well, you know, the $1 million just evaporated.
Right.
I mean, because it cost so much. But there are true blue producers
Yes.
in the business.
Yes.
And you've got to follow their lead.
And you
I-
never know who you meet when that
That's
will come to
absolutely
fruition.
right.
And
That's
so
right.
it's an interesting thing. So I got out here and I struggled, but eventually things took off. And eventually my wife quit the soap. She made a statement that truly proved to be the opposite. She said, I think I can always get another good acting role easier than I could get another great husband. Well, it was the sweetest line, but the truth is, she could have gotten another husband a hell of a lot easier than getting another great
Well,
role.
that's very, very true. It's very, very true. I'll tell you, when we moved from Connecticut to California, and my wife was like, when do we leave?
Right.
I couldn't believe it, because most women, and she was a Connecticut Yankee, you know, would say, my family, I have
Right.
to leave, and this and that. And
Right.
she's like, oh, great, new experience, here we
Yes.
go. And I think that that is so important. It's
Yeah.
so important. But let's talk a little bit about your design career.
Okay.
And how you started designing for celebrity friends.
Yeah, I started with friends, people that happened to be, a few of them well-known. Pat Riley, the ex-coach of the Lakers, who's become an NBA Hall of Fame coach. And Marsha Mason, who was an early dear friend. We were in acting class together. She went out and did ACT in San Francisco. My wife followed her and took over her roles at ACT. So we knew Marsha, and when I started doing a few things, Marsha came to our home and said, gee, I love what you're doing. Would you help me with a few things? So I did that, and that got published, and Pat Riley's Early House got published, and they said, well, who did this? And they mentioned my name, and so the magazines would call and say, you know, what else have you done? I said, well, nothing, and I'm not doing this. I'm an actor. And that kind of stopped it for a while. But I started working on our own home, our first place, which was my dream. When I got out here, I was shocked by the Spanish world, the
That's the
Spanish
thing.
influence.
That's so beautiful.
I never knew about it to the degree that it exists here.
Yeah.
And in northern Wisconsin, you don't see much Spanish
No.
anything. So I was just transfixed by that, and so I thought if I could get a little house that had that feeling. So we bought a little bungalow, and I started out, and before I knew it, I had gutted the thing, and then we actually tore off a portion of the house, and before we knew it, I had expanded it to almost triple its original size, and turned it into a Spanish rancho-style architecture. For whatever reason, I will never know, because you look at a house under construction, they all look like they're a house under construction. They don't look any different than any other, but the interest. People would stop their cars, and I'm telling you this happened all the time, get out and say, what's happening here? What
Right.
is this?
Exactly.
What is happening? And the fact that I had put it inside a walled enclosure, like early rancho houses had,
Right.
I think that might have been part of it. But anyway, that house got published. House and Garden came and saw it. and wanted to publish it. I was still an actor. I wasn't doing this at all. Wasn't thinking of it. It wasn't even in my mind.
Does this go back to Mary Jane Poole or Nancy Novograd? Or?
Nancy Novograd was someone who did publish some of my things, but that house was other people, and there's people we know, and I'm blanking on.
Well, it was a beautiful house, and the thing that I think is so amazing about you, and I want to tell a little story about you, but your love for California architecture, I guess it goes back to when you wanted to be a cowboy.
Yeah.
But I mean, all of the wonderful architecture and artifacts that you collect.
Right.
And I'll never forget when the two of us, and this is before we really knew each other, were designing projects for Project Angel Food,
Right.
which was one of the first benefits for AIDS. And I can remember you coming in. We were each given a little space, I think maybe 6 feet by 6 feet. And I was like, what is this guy doing? It looked like you were creating an Adobe or something
Yeah.
on the site
Yeah.
of this space.
Yeah.
And what inspired you, and how long did that take?
Well, it was bigger than 6 by 6.
Well, maybe, but I remember it's small.
It was small, but what I wanted to do was create a complete environment. And so I had the idea of doing a stone house that you would find in rural southern France, that an artist like Picasso or those people who during that era would go and use in the summertime and sleep in some little area of the barn.
Right.
So that was the concept, which we hauled all this stone and sand and gravel and
couldn't believe it. I watched it.
And roof tile and everything into
Yes.
this, which is a wonderful story that brought me one of my most wonderful clients, which was Larry David and his wife, the comedian Larry David.
Yes.
His wife walked by, and she had been to my home, the Spanish Rancho house, for a baby shower or something, and said, "Oh my gosh, if I could ever live in this house, I would give anything to do it."
There were
And
a couple of people saying that.
And I said, "Well, that would be fun, but I'm not moving." And she said, "Well, if you ever do, or if you ever want to do it, if I ever make enough money to hire you, I will." And I was still an actor, so I said, "Well, that's great." And she was very sweet. She said, "I'm dating this fellow who is a taxi driver in New York, and he does stand-up comedy. I don't know if he'll ever amount to anything.
gosh.
I don't know if he's even going to marry me, but if he asked me, I would." Years go by,
Yeah.
and we build that for Project Angel Food, and she and her girlfriends come to that and are walking by, and she looks up and she sees my name coming off this little shed. And she said, "Oh my gosh, I forgot all about him.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if he could come and maybe do something for us?" So she calls me up. She said, "You remember when I told you about that guy driving taxi? Well, his name's Larry David.
He's doing very well.
he just sold Seinfeld and that he created."
Right.
And anyway, so I went over and we looked at what she wanted to do, and they had another architect. They had a whole plan, and I looked at it and I said, "I don't think this is what you should do."
See?
And she said, "You mean, what are you saying?" I said, "I think you should let that person go, and I think we should do something completely different."
Do you have any other anecdotes about wonderful celebrity stories that you can share?
Well, yeah, there's a few. I didn't. Diane Keaton was never my client, but a home I did in Brentwood Park, a Spanish colonial.
And she's become a very big aficionado.
Unbelievable. I
Yes.
mean, her taste
Beautiful
is,
book.
along with the designer that she has worked with for years, the two of them are just superb. And she's very knowledgeable, particularly about the Spanish style home.
Yes.
So anyway, I came into my client's home one day, and standing there was Diane Keaton and my client. And my client said, "Well, you're loving the home. This is the fellow who designed it." And she turned and she said, "Oh, my Lord, this is the greatest." And she went on and on to incredible detail, which was so fun. About 2 years pass, And I walk into my doctor's office early in the morning, like at 8 o'clock. He always would put me first. I'd ask to be first so that I didn't have to wait for hours. And sitting there was Diane Keaton. And it's like early morning. So I thought, well, she probably doesn't want to be disturbed. But Diane, I don't know if you remember me, but we met at so-and-so's house, and I had done the house, and you were so kind to say such wonderful things. And she said, oh, really? Okay, well, that's nice. So anyway, the doctor comes and calls me in, and I felt, oh, boy, I think I've offended her. So now we're in the back room. There's nobody else there. And so the doors are open. There's no privacy. I'm in my underwear.
She comes bursting
I'm in my undershorts. And all of a sudden, she comes blasting us. I just remembered. I remembered when we met. Oh my God, that house was remarkable. And she stands in the doorway while I'm sitting there on a table with my, my all together, and it was just hysterical.
Oh, that is very, very funny. Well, I think that you have given us just a smidgen of the things that we want to hear from you. So I'm going to invite you back. And now that you know where to find the Calabasas Country Club, that is going to be able for you. And I want to make that invitation sincere, not like the Hollywood producers. But in closing, what inspires you? Because you know that the name of this podcast is Inspired.
Right.
Can you zero it into any one direction that gave you the shove to do what you wanted to do?
Other than, I would say, the combination of my parents that we mentioned, just art in itself, whether any art form, literally painting, music, film, dance, all these things have attracted me, fashion, all those things have attracted me. And at the center of it, in my design work, I do it as if I'm painting a painting. Mm-hmm. It's the very same root to everything. I would say any designer, when you're putting together, it's like a storyboard for a film. Right. And I always like to, almost as a writer, I like to make a story for every project. And the inspiration to me comes from all of the art forms that I have pursued, done,
and that's what it
and
takes.
Enjoyed.
That's what it takes.
Yeah.
I can remember interviewing a very famous French designer in France, and he brought out a box. And I said, what is? He said, this is what we do for each of our clients. Mm-hmm. And it had a beautiful photograph of the house. And then he proceeded to show me the swatches, the sketches, and everything else. It is like a storyboard.
Exactly.
And that was what you do so well. And I mean it. I am a big fan of yours.
Likewise,
since I saw all that construction coming into the space, and I was scratching my head, what is this guy building? But I'll never forget it. And thank you so much for sharing this time.
Thank you, Joe. It's been a delight.
And please come back.
I would love to anytime you want to.